in the great state of New Hampshire. Welcome to the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast, where we discuss all things related to hiking and search and rescue in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. Here are your hosts, Mike and Stump.
Right, Stump. Cracking open a beer.
Brewski,
episode 89. Welcome. Are you awake now? You've been tired this week. I'm concerned about you.
Yeah, man. I don't know. I just maybe need more coffee and less triple IPA. That's probably the solution right there.
You gotta stay awake at night. Stop canceled on me last night.
Yeah, I was exhausted. I'm like, I don't want to record unless I'm really up on the energy game, and I just did not have it.
Are you feeling energetic tonight?
Yeah, I feel much better, actually. There's a whole bunch of good stuff to talk about, so I'm ready to go.
Okay.
How about you?
Yeah.
You feeling good?
I'm feeling okay. I've had my own issues with energy this week because I've been driving into the office for the last 3 days. And it's been brutal.
My God.
Like the mental toll that it takes for me to drive from my house into Boston and Cambridge is just unbelievable.
So is this the first time in how long?
I've gone into the office like once or twice for like an hour here or there just to catch up with different people that were in town to say hi. But this is the first time like I've really been in there.
The commute.
Had meetings and had to like sort of sit there for like 8 hours and actually work. And I had to do that like 3 days.
So like rush hour?
Yeah. I did.
The whole thing?
So I had to get in early
man.
and drive home and stuff. And it was like an hour and a half to get from Cambridge back to my house.
Did you get to sneak your runs in the morning?
I ran locally at my house and then took a shower. So I did sneak in some runs.
Wow.
But I had to get up earlier. I had to get up an hour earlier. And but it is kind of sad. Like the office that I work in is like we opened the office up in October of 2019. And then we worked until March of 2020. I mean, this is a brand new building. Like this is like
I've seen it.
Picture whatever you see on like Silicon Valley, like that TV show, like those offices it's basically set up like that. But now there's nobody in there.
Huh? Isn't that funny? Yeah, I got a good look at it from a trip to the Marriott. Is the Marriott right across the way there?
Yes.
Yeah, and the room I was in actually had a view of the Akamai building. I'm like, oh wow, yes. There it is.
Yeah, you can see it right there anyway. But
that sucks,
anyway,
bro.
Made it through, so it's a fun week.
Yeah. How was the gas? You have to fill up.
Yeah, I did. I actually, and it's weird because I usually only fill up like when I'm driving up to New Hampshire, but I did fill up, and it was $3 a gallon, so gas isn't too bad right now.
Yeah. That's good. Oh, Daphne's here. Daphne's going to hang out with me.
Hey, Associate producer. Associate producer. Anyway, breaking news. So we have a bunch of like miscellaneous stuff. I have a feeling this is going to take us like a half hour before we get to the show opener. But before we even get into this, do we want to like you have to answer for like the scheduling issues again?
Well, in terms of the guests that canceled, or what do you mean?
Yeah.
Well, yes, that's true. I was going to mention it a little later, but I mean, this has been week number 2. We tried to get Ty on, but unfortunately Ty had a family event that popped up unexpectedly, so he was obligated to attend that. So he will be on soon enough, but we're hoping to sort of set the table for a really good topic with him, and he'll be in soon enough, but he's just one of those things.
Yeah. It's just like technical difficulties, scheduling challenges. I mean,
it's been everything.
It definitely happens. So
yeah.
Anyway, Stomp, breaking news.
This just came out today. So in the first session of 2023, the New Hampshire State Senate, I don't know if anybody's been following this, but I heard about it about a month ago. SB 13, the Senate unanimously passed this bill, and it basically permits the New Hampshire Department of Motor Vehicles to suspend the driver's license of anybody who refuses to make payments after fishing game, charges them for the cost involved with rescuing that person. So that's a pretty big story. So I don't know if it's already passed the House or not. It's obviously bicameral, but I'm sure it's going to pass if it's this unanimous.
I think it makes sense. I mean, I think I'm of two minds of this. One, I think that you need to have some tools to give sort of punitive actions for people that aren't paying their fines. I think that this is such a small scale thing that, it's only going to impact maybe less than 10 people a year, if even that amount. But I also do struggle a little bit because I do know when I was a young person, like I got like in over my head with like speeding tickets and like parking tickets and that stuff. And I think I got a ticket in Maine at one point, and I tried to renew my license in Massachusetts because I think I got a summons to basically go up to court in Maine.
Yeah.
I didn't go there, and I don't think I knew that you could just sort of say like, give me a fine or whatever. So when I went to renew my license in Massachusetts, I couldn't renew my license because Maine and Massachusetts have a reciprocity deal.
Sure.
And I think New Hampshire does as well, where if you have a speeding ticket, you can't renew your license. And, it's just like, I do feel like there's certain people that sort of get in these financial hardships because of these continued like fines and then penalties, and then they lose their insurance, and it becomes this spiral where it's a financial thing where, I just don't know if New Hampshire offers options for people that just truly can't afford to pay these, whether they could like work it off, like, pick up trash on the side of the road or do whatever they can for.
Well, I'd like to cover that before we move on to the next topic, because I do want to just tell listeners what the process is on Fish and Game's end. It's actually really interesting. If there's a rescue and Fish and Game determines that somebody was negligent, what they do is they determine the actual cost for the rescue, and you're talking like overtime, cost for gas and things like that. And then what happens, the colonel has to approve the billing. So they draft up a billing memo, and that has to be approved by Colonel Jordan at the moment. And then from there, that gets sent over to the state attorney general. And the state attorney general has to sign off on that bill. So there's quite a process to it. The really interesting thing about this is, though, Fish and Game offers payment plans. So with this story in mind, I think what they're saying is that if somebody has signed on to a payment plan, acknowledging that they're at fault or agreeing to a payment plan, and then they, neglect to pay, that's when this will kick in. A person still has the right to take, their case to trial to one of the lower courts, but I'm assuming that this means that there was a plan in place and they just failed to pay. And in that case, it gets sent over to the DMV, and they get, shut down.
Got it. So they have some options. I do.
They do.
I feel like I'm a little bit more like, I know our town recently like reduced all the speeds on the roads to 25 miles an hour, and everybody was sort of cheering about it, and they're saying like, okay, well, this is so great, it's going to improve safety. And I'm sort of like, if you look at the accident data and like the fatality data in our town, like there's never any, there's maybe one or two fatalities in the last 5 years. There's a couple hundred accidents maybe over the course of like the last couple of years. And I feel like a lot of times, like when they put these laws in place, really who benefits is, the speeding fines that the towns get for giving tickets is like nothing compared to the benefits that the insurance companies get for the points increasing on people's insurance. And it's basically like, I think I read somewhere that it's like you pay 3 times the amount of your insurance when you get like speeding tickets and points or something like that, because it just stays on for like 5 years. So I don't want to benefit insurance companies on this type of stuff, but I think in the case of the fines you're talking about, it sounds like they really have to go out of their way to not pay something to get in trouble.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. So I'm in favor of it. Personally, I think it's fine.
No, I think it's fine. And it's small numbers.
Yeah.
So,
and there's actually an interesting Reddit link too, with a whole bunch of different takes on it. So we'll give you that link in the show notes.
Awesome. All right. So next topic, Stomp. This is huge. Are you sitting down?
I'm sitting down with Daphne, and she's crawling all over me. for goodness sakes.
Well, this is huge, and I want to thank my friend Andy, who we got to get her on at some point because she's out in Missouri. She runs the Ozark, one of the bigger Ozark Trail groups, and she had sent this over in a group that we're in, and I thought that this would be very exciting news for you and Mrs. Stomp.
Yeah.
There's a new TV show out on the Hallmark Channel. It's called Love in Glacier National, a national parks romance.
Oh, jeez.
Listen to the plot line.
Okay.
An avalanche forecasting expert brings her new technology to Glacier National Park, where she faces pushback from the director of mountain rescue, who's trained in intuition and common sense. So basically, it's like a female forecasting expert that's like bringing her new toys to like forecast avalanches.
Right, but he's working on intuition.
And then she runs into like the crusty search and rescue guy, and then romance ensues. This is going to be awesome.
Oh my God, that's amazing. I didn't know Hallmark was still a thing.
Oh, it is, yeah. So,
excuse me, I still have my little cough here, believe it or not. Ugh.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever talked about this, but I am like I don't even know if I'm a closet, but I'm like I love the holiday movies. You know, those holiday like Christmas romance movies. I love
totally.
Those. So I think that like this one would be right up our alley.
Yeah, I'll have to definitely catch that. Amazing.
Yeah, it's on Saturday, January 28th. Matter of fact, we may need to do a whole show just watching this and doing like the Mystery
commentary?
Theater 3000 or whatever that is.
Right. That's actually a really good idea. We'd probably get sued for copyright, though.
I don't know. We'll have to see. Okay, so anyway, Love in Glacier National Park. It's on January 28th on the Hallmark Channel. I got to see if I even have the Hallmark Channel, but I'm excited.
Yeah, that's super cool. That's a good one. Good find.
What would be like if we were going to make like a Hallmark romance movie based in the White Mountains? Like, what would the plot be?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Idea.
Oh, do you?
I have an idea. Yeah.
Let's hear
I feel like we'd have to integrate cats into it, but like somebody basically like it would be like a cat gets loose, and it would be like it would climb up into the mountains, and you know, you'd have this lady who was like visiting from the city. So she was visiting like Waterville Valley from like Andover or something like that, right?
Okay.
And then her cat gets loose, and she's running around trying to find the cat, and the only person that like could, and then she finds it up in a tree, and then the only person that could save the cat is this like crusty like snowmaker guy from Waterville Valley. And he like basically begrudgingly like saves her cat, and then she's on vacation in Waterville Valley and has a bunch of different calamities, and he always has to bail her out. And then they go to they basically have a romance, and then they'll go to the, they'll drive around and they'll see the Old Woodpecker restaurant and decide that they're going to rehab it together and get married.
You got like a whole screenplay ready to go.
Yeah, that was at the top of my. That was off the top of my head.
That was impressive. Like somebody spike your drink or what? What's going on here?
If anybody's listening and they have some ability to make a movie, that would be a great student movie.
Lynn's probably listening.
Yes,
Lynn will get right on it, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. All right, enough with this nonsense. So we've got a hiking update. So I have a clarification on our last episode. I can't remember who gave me this heads up. I'll give them a shout out on the show notes. But I had mentioned when we were talking about unpopular opinions, I had mentioned that somebody had talked about an abandoned trail in a bushwhack to a waterfall, and I called it Hitchcock. It's actually called Hawthorne Falls.
Okay.
And shout out to, it was listener Joseph. So thank you, Joseph, for that.
Gotcha.
It happens. This is a good one for you. And I'll link this. There's an article here that is the Lost Waterfalls of the White Mountains. Have you heard of this place, by the way?
Is it a website you mean, or Hawthorne? Hawthorne Falls? I have not.
Falls.
Doesn't ring a bell.
All right. So Hawthorne Falls lies near the 3,000-foot contour line in a north-facing ravine on the side of Mount Garfield.
Okay.
The drainage is unnamed on most maps, but commonly goes by the name Garfield Stream. So to reach Hawthorne Falls, basically take the Geel River trailhead, and then you're going to take I guess you're going to turn off of that trailhead.
Yeah.
And go past Garfield Stream, and then I guess look to your right for a pathway, and so it may be a good bushwhack for you to check out.
Okay, so it's more like a broken-in path, a little herd path.
Yeah,
probably.
I think it's between Geel River and Garfield Trail. It's like right in that ravine in the middle.
That sounds good. I do have a list of other waterfalls that are pretty hard to find. Like there's one as you head up towards the B-18 bomber on Waternomy, and a few others that people might be interested in. I can dig up that list of mine.
Yeah, definitely do that, and I'll include this. So this article has Hawthorne Falls. It has Old Zealand Falls in Bethlehem.
Yeah.
Bridesmaid Falls in Franconia.
Yes. Bridesmaid is on the western side of the Kinsmans.
Yeah,
that's a
neat Cascades of Appalachia in Randolph, which is up north. So check it out. But I do feel like this one, Hawthorne Falls, that might be worth checking out. It looks like a pretty cool cascading waterfall.
Yeah.
Anyway, so sorry about that if somebody was looking for more details.
Count on us. The accurate information.
Yeah. Another one, another update here, Stomp. So somebody had sent in a correction. We had talked about, when did we talk about protocols for poop?
We've talked about it many times, but this was a story in reference to out west. They were getting frustrated with all the visitors leaving their feces behind and stuff like that, and we brought up a packet that they're using that visitors can use to dispose of their waste. It had like the little shovel, and little bag, and everything else. I forget the name of it.
Yeah, but anyway, this listener had a few comments, but the one thing that they wanted to call out is that the use of a cat hole, which is basically digging like 6 or 8 inches down and then doing your business and then covering it up. The use of a cat hole
is secondary.
Secondary. I guess that's not the official leave no trace process, but it's also, I think, based on the location. I think out west it doesn't work. You're supposed to like pack it out. Yeah. I don't know. I haven't even looked at the specific rules in the White Mountain National Forest, but I feel like below tree line, there's enough sort of like nitrogen in the soil or whatever that it's reasonable to use a cat hole, but maybe it's not officially allowed. You are supposed to pack it out. I don't know.
It depends on the location from what I've seen. There are some, if not many, that suggest using either method, whether it be cat hole or the pack it out. Some of the negatives for using the cat hole would be like in winter. It's just not going to get deep enough, that type of thing. And depending on the sunny side versus the shady side, it may not decompose as quickly. This one person had stated something about animals digging the feces and the non-biodegradable toilet paper, so you could use biodegradable toilet paper. So there's a whole bunch of factors. But from what I understand, there's 2 methods. So the pack it out is preferred, but it's not against the rules by any means in the national forests for the cat hole.
Yeah. I definitely have known some friends in some scenarios where dogs have gotten a hold of something. So
yeah, that's a mess.
But I'm also like of 2 minds of that. Like, okay, yeah, the dog got a hold of it, but if the dog was near you, then it wouldn't be an issue. So
yeah, that's very interesting.
Yep. All right, so the next one here, Stomp, this you may not care about this one, but I do. So Strava is an app that people use. So I personally use I have a Garmin Forerunner 935, which anybody that's using a Sun 2 or a Garmin watch, typically they have native apps on them where you download an activity. Like if I go running or if I go hiking, I basically set my GPS, and then I'll have like it basically ports into this Garmin Connect app that will show me all the details, like how many miles I went, what the elevation is essentially, so I can use that. But Strava is an app that actually lays on top of these different GPS tracking platforms, and it's a kind of a social app where people can give you like thumbs up. You can essentially just port over your activities onto Strava. And the nice thing about it is that it doesn't care what platform you're using. Like it can connect to a Fitbit, an iPhone, or an iWatch. It can connect to a Garmin, a Sun, to any device that you have that records a GPS track. You can push it on the Strava. It's got some cool features that I like to use. I like the flyby features, and it's got pretty good mapping. So a lot of people will use it, and it's like a monthly cost or an annual cost. I don't even know what the cost is, but they've announced that they're increasing their prices at this point, but really it's kind of a weird rollout where people have been upset that they aren't disclosing exactly what the new prices will be. So DC Rainmaker had put an article together basically just sort of being frustrated, saying that Strava wasn't giving information, only that they were going to be announcing an increase, and it was going to be a subscription increase anywhere between a 15 to 70% increase depending on the region, your billing type, and when you signed up. So if you do use the Strava paid features, just be aware that likely this will hit in the next couple of months. I guess in addition to that, they've laid off about 15% of their staff, and I think that this whole industry across like the GPS technology, I think the bike training, Wahoo, Specialized, these different companies it calls out, a lot of them are consolidating. They're under cost pressure, and my guess is that like a company like Strava might get acquired eventually.
Interesting. Well,
yeah,
growing pains.
Yeah, very interesting. So,
yeah. I think I have an account up there, but I really haven't used it. I just don't have the gear to really use it when I'm out there doing my stuff. So,
yeah, I may have to look at it. Like I do enjoy it. People give you a thumbs up, and you can follow people that you know. Like
right.
The reason you do it is because if your friend is using an iWatch and then you're using a Garmin, like if I'm just in my Garmin world, then I don't see that person's activity. So Strava basically connects across all these platforms. So, but I don't know if it's worth like whatever the cost is per month.
Yeah, well, keep us posted.
Yep. So Stump, you probably need to cover this next article that we pulled in here.
Yeah, it's my favorite place on earth, next to Crane Beach in Massachusetts. But apparently there's a lot of a firestorm going on here over a proposed project in Adams, and basically at the Gould Farm, which is at the base of Mount Greylock, there was an approval by the town of Adams to have a developer basically create a campground at this glen area. And the plan is to build 35 luxury cabins with granite countertops, showers, marble bathrooms, etc., etc. There will be 19 mirrored cabins, and the plan also includes 9 Airstream trailers that are 22 feet long, and it's literally at the base of Mount Greylock. So you can access a lot of the Greylock trails from this region, and the town is just flipping their lid about this. And some of the comments are just basically like, what happened to the rustic idea or the rustic campsites, or, no trailers over 15 feet. So I guess there's a risk that it's going to really sort of diminish the rural quiet feel out there, this obnoxious plan, but we shall see. It's very interesting. Apparently there's, a state resource and should be a concern to everyone in the Commonwealth. The 35 individuals and 4 organizations signed below are requesting another public meeting. So it's just this extended battle going on here in the heart of the Berkshires.
I went to school in North Adams. I did some hiking up on Greylock, but I wasn't into hiking back then that much. Unfortunately, I wish I had taken advantage of it. But North Adams wasn't exactly like the most pristine place in the world, and Adams never was either. So, yeah. But I think that's different than like in the wooded section. So who knows?
Sure. It reminds me of the whole, cog development, stuff like that. There's just a lot of that stuff happening in and around. And this whole proposal with Waterville, I guess I'm just a little sensitive to it right now. Expanding the ski slopes. I don't know.
Not in my backyard, right?
Yes. Cheers to that.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway, well.
Oh boy.
Okay, so this next one here, you put this. So we've got, I think I got another article about Yellowstone, but 15 miles from civilization, someone removed Yellowstone snowmobiler's ignition key.
Yeah. I mean, there's just a dispute as to whether or not this couple should have been on this trail that's utilized by like tours and this and that. So apparently this couple went out understanding they understood that they could go use this snowmobile path, and they ended up coming up upon one of these tours, and the people that were riding in the tour apparently just flipped out on them, and ultimately at one point hid the snowmobile starting key in the front portion of the tread underneath. So thankfully this couple found the starter ignition key, or they would have been stuck 15 miles out, which is that's pretty shitty if you think about it. Getting stuck 15 miles out in this part of the world, it's pretty outrageous. So they're complaining about it, and it's an emerging story. I don't know if people know that or not, but the newer sleds don't start. It's like a concave little glove that fits over this metal knob, and without that on there, that sled's not moving anywhere. So you lose it, you're in trouble.
Interesting. So their theory is that the people they got into the sort of argument with took the key and hid it on them.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, there was nobody else out there at the time, so they're saying it looks like a malicious act. And this is
that is not cool.
Yeah, not cool. Speaking of sledding, I should be guiding starting up tomorrow, Saturday, with all the snow coming in. So I hope somebody joins me for a tour.
I know. Now, how does it work? Do you have to go out and ride the trails and get them smoothed down first before the yahoos from Massachusetts get on there?
No. All the local clubs have groomers, and they get out overnight and in the evening, and actually during the day as well sometimes. So they're constantly grooming the snow. So it should be ready. It should be open this weekend. I'm praying to God, but next week we're looking at it like 15 inches of snow. So I think the season's officially going to get going.
Okay. Yeah. I'm hoping for you guys. I think
me too. I can't wait.
I know we were supposed to get rain tonight, and luckily it's switched over, so the snow line actually dropped into northern Massachusetts, and it looks like we're going to get a snowy mix between now and about 4 a.m. And my daughter Megan is putting the spoon under her pillow and has got her clothes on inside out when she goes to bed tonight. So she's hoping to have school canceled tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Oh, fingers crossed.
Yeah, we'll see.
I don't know.
All right, so next one here is a
interesting
like I said,
story.
This is going to go a little bit long. So hiker stumbles on a dinosaur bone.
Yeah, can you imagine? So this hiker stumbled upon a bone and ended up finding other bones once people came out to investigate. So this is out in Colorado, and excavators found one more bone, actually. So it was in the Royal Gorge region, which is famous for prehistoric fossil remains. And I don't know, that's super cool. I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, people find stuff up here sometimes, but not that large, like the finds out west. Pretty neat story.
Have you ever found anything when you're hiking stop?
No, just those I forget what they're called, but when you have a small stone and there's just an imprint of a small little prehistoric bug on there. I've found those in the past, but certainly no bones or anything like that.
Yeah, I've never found anything. Well, the only thing, I didn't find it. Mindy and Beth Lynn did, but we did find that backpack from that was only 5 years old.
Yeah, well, this is like 150 million years old.
Yeah. You've never found like a arrowhead or anything like that?
Nope. And I'm sure we've seen a million of them. I mean, based upon the finds that like Casey and others have lucked into, they're everywhere.
Yep. Yeah.
Neat stuff.
All right, this next one. So Backpacker Magazine put out this article, Stomp. I wanted to run this by you.
Yeah.
So they talk about the, Emily Sotelo was a 19-year-old hiker that had died on Franconia Ridge in November, and then we had another gentleman that died. I think he was in his late 20s. He died on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day. So this prompted Backpacker Magazine to write an article sort of covering both of those stories and take the angle about basically saying, like, when hikers die, why are we so quick to judge? And I thought that this would be sort of interesting to get your perspective on, Stomp. I think, me personally, I feel like I'm probably more guilty. Like, historically, I think I've talked about this on the show before, but I think, originally the whole Sounds Like a Search and Rescue was a joke among a few friends to sort of say, like, we'd hear somebody planning on doing a hike in an area, and we'd be like, they don't look like they're experienced. Like, it sounds like a search and rescue is going to happen. But over time, I think I've become much more, my empathy level has become, I think, that of a normal human being when it comes to this stuff. And I understand that there's a whole big picture around these things, and that, you have to approach these with empathy and understanding.
Oh, absolutely.
But I do think that, like, the crux of the article is basically like, why didn't they do X, Y, and Z? If they had done that, they would have survived, and I know what to do, and it could never happen to me. And the point of the article is that this stuff could happen to anybody, and that we're all taking risk out there. But I don't know what your perspective is on this.
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, the article doesn't really touch upon social media, does it? I mean, what is the context of this article? Is it just people in general, or because my big issue is social media sort of promotes that whole thing, just Facebook in particular. It can be a cesspool for judgment and pre-guessing and just speculation, and I think that's the biggest problem.
Well, I think it specifically calls out the New England hiking groups on Facebook. And the writer basically says that they were relieved to see most of the comments about Emily's death, and there were hundreds of them were compassionate. People talked about how shocked they were. They sent all kinds of thoughts and prayers. There was a bunch of sort of helpful messages around gear checklists, links to GPS devices, etc. And then there was some what the writer calls self-aggrandizing commenters who announced everything that Emily had done wrong.
That's a big problem.
Yeah, clothing and whatnot. And I think there's certainly some people that come from it judgmentally. I know that there was a lot of questions about sort of the headlamp lighting situation and what she had used for lighting, and how the sort of the whole getting dropped off and what that entailed with her mom. But most of the comments I read were very sympathetic and encouraging and hopeful. But there's always going to be a few people, I think, that are, I guess, smarter than everybody else. Right.
But again, I think it's cultural. Just the headline of this story is, why are we so quick to judge? I mean, without half of these groups and social media, it wouldn't happen. I mean, there'd be no conversation about it other than you and your family or whatever. It's just this automatic ability to put out your opinion about every single damn thing. It's just the culture.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously we had a podcast where we talk about all this stuff, but I think we've tried to, I think you've always been here, but I've always been sort of more, I think, judgmental about this stuff, and I've definitely in the past been that guy that's like, oh, that would never happen to me.
Yeah.
But I think as I've started, the thing that really clicked for me was when I started collecting the data. The reason I started collecting the data on search and rescue is that people were constantly getting on these social media groups and saying, we'd have one incident and people would be like, search and rescue's out of control. And I'd say, is search and rescue out of control, or is this just the reaction to one incident?
Yeah.
And what I found over time is I was like, search and rescue events are actually pretty consistent year over year. Like the volume doesn't change. You get streaks. It's definitely like December. This winter was very streaky, November, December this year. But for the most part, the volumes don't change much. And that has to, the volumes of total events, deaths on trail, fatalities, it doesn't change that much year over year. But it also sort of piqued my interest to say, what can we do to get the message out to keep people a little bit more safe?
What clicked for me is dragging people out of the woods.
Yeah.
You get a level of empathy that you may not have otherwise. And spend your weekend dragging somebody out of the woods for several hours, and you might be less quick to judge.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's part of what, that's probably part of what's turned me around too, you just sort of, your friends that are out there, not just you, but other people I know that are on search and rescue, and you get a little bit of a different perspective. So we're certainly not perfect, but I think that this article's interesting. I'll link it in the show notes, and
it's a good.
Probably when Ty does come back, we can revisit this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's an important conversation though, and I think it's the recent events have really spurred on this topic, and we're going to touch upon a couple things tonight and set Ty up, and it's a good conversation. It's important.
Yep. Yeah. So next bullet here, Stump, we have advertise with SLASR. Are we looking for more advertisers?
Oh yeah. If you're interested in promoting your stuff, your gear, your merch, whatever, your project, let us know. You can send us a email inquiring about that. And we have a really cool community. I mean, it's bursting at the seams here with hikers and adventurers throughout New England and the Northeast in general. So if you're looking to reach that community, then we really do have some reasonable rates and good results so far. So it's super cool. So just drop an email at SLASRPodcast.com at gmail.com. Sorry, SLASR podcast at gmail.com.
Very good. So Stump, I got a lot of feedback from people that liked the unpopular opinion segment last week, so I got another one. I've got worst backpacking advice, Appalachian Trail edition here. So I picked up. There was a couple of discussions across the internet, so I wanted to run these by you. So this is again backpacking advice, or bad backpacking advice, Appalachian Trail edition. So this won't be just New Hampshire, but the first one is believing people who say that you're almost there. That's just general hiking advice. Like, don't believe anybody, right?
Yeah. Definitely no. Don't listen.
Yeah. People who say that boots should be worn year-round.
Huh. I'm a boots guy year-round.
Yeah.
You're talking on trail, though, rather than trail runners?
Yeah, I like immediately switch to trail runners once it gets to be mud season.
Yeah, that's interesting. I
the only time I wear boots is like winter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The next one is there's a train of thought that Virginia is like a flat area to hike. So a lot of the thru hikers are told that once you get into Virginia, it's really flat, and people say that's just a lie.
Yeah. What's out there for high points on the AT? Is that McAfee Knob? Is that Virginia?
I think that is like McAfee Knob, and like Lynn was talking about that last week about like that section. There's some devil. I can't remember what it is, but I think that's McAfee Knob. The next one is people who tell you never to hike solo, which I agree. I mean, it's a balance, obviously.
Yeah.
You got to know what you're doing.
Sure, especially on massive adventures like that.
Yep. Ultra Lone Peaks, which are trail runners, are the best hiking shoes. So these are really popular shoes. Mm-hmm. Stump, I think you can probably talk to this, but I think what I understand about this is the reason a lot of people love these shoes, but there's a lot of people who start their thru hikes off.
Yeah.
They look at like the best trail runners list. They get these Ultra Lone Peaks. there's zero drop shoes.
Right.
So they've never hiked in zero drop shoes, and inevitably what ends up happening is that maybe their Achilles or their calves are tight,
right,
and they're overstretching their Achilles. They're getting Achilles tendonitis. So
sure,
you have to be careful with these zero drop shoes. I don't know all the mechanics around it. You probably know better than I do.
Mm-hmm. So Lone Peaks are zero drop?
Correct.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, if you're not used to those, I mean, every shoe has to have a little break-in period if you're going to use them for something like that, the AT or even hiking. But
yeah, what is it about zero? Is it my assumption that zero drop shoes, they'll stretch your Achilles out too much if you're not used to them, right?
Sure, yeah. Like if you go from a boot to a zero, then you're dealing with quite a change in the ankle dynamics, and there's more stress and pull on the Achilles, like you'd mentioned. Yeah,
I think just in general, like a through hike, like I would not do a through hike unless I had my sneakers dialed in, and I had used the trail runners I was going to use and pretty frequently.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no question. But the body needs a period of change and adjustment for drastic changes like that.
Yeah. And I just wish the listeners could like see behind you, like the associate producer is just like, she's luxuriating on the couch. She's like stretching out. She's scratching the couch. It's just, she's living her best life.
Cute. Yeah, she'll be asleep in about an hour. She just dozes off to the mellifluous tones of my voice.
Yeah, and even though Stomp, like he's got his lights on tonight, usually he's in the pitch black, but like all I can really see is like just spots of white, and then Daphne's just mostly dark.
Well, she's keeping an eye on me. She's the assistant executive producer, so.
Yep, she likes it. All right, here's another one, is that you don't need to be in shape to start a through hike. You'll get on shape when you get on the trail. Absolute
bullshit. You have to have some level of preparedness and training. It may not be 30 miles a day type of preparedness, but you can't just go from couch to AT.
I'm sure some people do. I absolutely believe that, but I think it's the exception rather than the rule.
Sure.
I think the rule is generally like if you hit the AT and you're not in shape, you're going to get halfway up Amicalola Falls and then tap out, which happens all the time. You'll see these people that are, putting their YouTube channels together, talking about how excited they are to do the AT, and then they get halfway up the falls on the first 3 miles and then they're done.
Well, my angle on it is you're going to be more prone to injury.
Yep.
The muscles aren't ready for it. Ligaments aren't strong enough for it. Your endurance isn't strong enough for it. There's so many reasons, so many things that could go wrong if you're not at least prepared for it to a degree.
Yes. The next worst backpacking advice, you need to carry a gun. Have we ever talked about this before?
No, we haven't. That's actually really interesting.
Yeah. Are you a gun guy? I'm not a gun guy.
Not when I'm hiking, but there have been occasions where I've gone on pretty wild bushwhacks where I did take one with me. And there was a period where I was stumbling upon weird, just like, I don't know, refuges in the woods that people are hiding out at. And that got me sort of wigged out for a period of time. Because people do hide in the woods from the law, felons or whatever else. I mean, that's pretty common. So there is that.
Takes out John Rambo in the woods.
That's right. But typically I don't. But there have been one or two occasions where I have gone out packing heat.
Interesting. Yeah. I saw a guy, we were hiking, me and my friend Tom were hiking like out to Isolation, and I was talking to a guy, and he had one of those like holsters on his chest or whatever. So we were just talking, and I actually didn't even notice the gun at first, and then I saw it was like a really small gun, and I was kind of like, I don't think that that's going to do any good against a bear. You need a bigger weapon. But that's the only time I've ever seen anyone with a gun I'm sure we pass people all the time that are packing, but you don't see it. He just happened to have his holster right in the middle of his chest.
Yeah. See, I compare it to hiking. I'm not hiking, but hunting. You're in the deep woods. It's slightly different than just being on trail. Like I wouldn't pack a gun on trail. But anyway.
Yeah. How much a gun has to weigh? Like probably a good 4 or 5 pounds, I would think, right?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, unless you're carrying a rifle like a hunter. But yeah. Anyway, interesting stuff.
The next one, worst backpacking advice, and this goes both ways. So you should sleep with your food.
That's absolutely foolish.
It is foolish, but I absolutely know a lot of like thru hikers that have done a lot of miles that just say that they screw it, they sleep with their food.
That's so dangerous. Interesting.
Dangerous,
and they haven't had problems?
I don't know. I mean, I would assume in the Smokies, like they have problems with beer, so everybody has to follow the same guidelines. I think in the Smokies, everybody has to stay at the shelters, and they have cables to hang your food because those beers are much more attuned, I think, to humans. But the only thing I've read about sleeping with your food, and I don't agree with this, and I always encourage people to hang or put it in a beer box if they're near storage. But what I've read, the theory is that like the bears are scared of humans, and that if you have your food near you, they won't go near you because they're afraid of you. But who knows?
Huh. So that's an interesting topic. I mean, we should move on, but protection on the trail. We've never really talked about that in detail. Options for protecting yourself, whether it be mace or whatever. We should do a segment on that sometime in the future.
Yeah, well, that would be fun.
Absolutely.
The next one is you need hiking poles. You don't need hiking poles.
Oh, wow.
So take your pick.
You know where I am on that one. And by the way, during the hiking buddies, nobody had poles. I was really impressed. I mean, they had them.
I didn't use them.
Yeah, nobody did. Nobody really did.
Yeah.
Pretty neat. But, that's personal preference for sure.
Yeah, I feel like if I was, and we'll talk about the buddy hike in a little while, but I feel like if I was using snowshoes, I do tend to use the poles just to stabilize myself, but we didn't need them then.
Yeah.
This is the last one, is you don't need a water filter. So there are some yahoos that will just, they basically think that they can pick out the safest water spots and the safest places to pull water, and they drink without filtering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was talking to a kid that was doing the AT when I was in Grafton Notch. We were staying at the shelter, and he said that he stopped filtering in like Virginia, and he's like, I haven't filtered at all. He's like, I just drink right out of the source, and I haven't had any issues. So.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
The closer
I don't recommend it.
The better. Yeah, right.
Yep. People do it. But anyway, that is Worst Backpacking Advice, Appalachian Trail Edition.
Good stuff.
Yep. All right, on to some pop culture stuff here.
We'll just mention what we've been doing because we are running long here. I saw Hidden, which is by the Duffer Brothers, and it's an earlier movie, and it blew me away. It was fantastic. Duffer Brothers are involved with Stranger Things. This is a really great movie. It's with one of the SCARS guards. There's 10 million SCARS guards out there acting. He's one of those guys. So check it out. It's super cool. Apocalyptic type of theme. Mrs. Stomp and I watched Tar with Cate Blanchett, and she's been winning some of the awards. This is pre-Oscar season. Keep an eye out for that. Have you seen that movie, Mike?
I have not.
Absolutely fantastic. Best acting I've seen in ages. We'll leave it at that. How about Last of Us? Did you get to see that one finally on HBO from the video game?
I did. So for the listeners, me and Stomp were like texting back and forth on Sunday night in anticipation of the show.
Yeah.
And I think you texted me like right before it was ready so it comes on at 9:00. You must have watched it right at 9:00 because you were like messaging me, and I had to tell you like you need to stop. I haven't started watching it yet. I was like 45 minutes behind you.
Spoiler alert. So I thought it was great. I saw most of the video game. My daughters were playing it back in the day, and this is well after my video game stint, so I was just watching them. But it's very good. I think the acting's good, and it's setting up for a decent season. One thing that annoyed the hell out of me, it's like very much with like audio production, we'll use plugins like reverb and delay and whatever else. The producers decided to plug in this shaky cam on the entire show. So basically, if you watch the outskirts of your TV screen, you'll see it moving constantly. So it's like this AI plugin that they will apply to whatever they capture on film. But it absolutely drove me nuts. That was my one and only complaint. But otherwise, it was good.
I didn't notice. Yeah, I didn't notice that. But I think my complaint is that it's a little bit of sort of been there, done that, like you have here, that it's like I Am Legend, World War Z, Walking Dead.
It's similar.
There's a little bit of that, like, I've seen this play before, but,
sure.
I like it so far.
Yeah, well, I don't know how it ends, but everybody that's seen the endings really spoke highly of it. It's just touching, emotional. So I'm looking forward to the end and how it resolves. It's supposed to be really good. Yeah.
And the other issue that I struggle with is that with HBO, like they release one episode a week, so they're still in that old.
I hate that.
I like Netflix where they just throw everything out. And
Absolutely.
You can binge it.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. And last night, just finally, we saw The Menu with Ralph Fiennes on. I think that was HBO Max as well. It's quirky. It's dark comedy. Will Ferrell, I guess, was involved with the production. And Rafe is just a phenomenal Shakespearean actor. Everybody knows Ralph Fiennes by this time. So that's really highly recommended. You'll get a couple good laughs out of it, but it's a very interesting story. It's quite a twist. And that's it.
All right. Well, that was good for pop culture here, Stomp. So I think next up is coffee talk here.
Yeah, let's see. We have Kim and Littlefoot. We all have seen Littlefoot on Instagram. We got to get them on soon. They donated a coffee for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kim and Littlefoot.
I might have misspelt this one, but I think it's Keith. Donated 3 and listens to the podcast while hiking. Someone donated 2, and they listen as well while they're driving. Let's see. John EX. I'm sorry, people. Sometimes these Instagram handles are so bizarre I can't figure them out. But John Oniak Davis donated 5, and this person is in South Africa listening to the podcast. How cool is that? And they're hoping to get back to New Hampshire. Keegs1614 donated 3. Duct Tape, I love that name. Duct Tape donated 5 and also listens while driving north. Stacy, hiking feeds my soul, and she listens while she grocery shops. So you're getting a little theme here. James Landoli donated 3. Thank you, James. And Linda, this just came in just about half an hour ago. Linda B donated 3, and she says, "Here's to finding your very own knobby, Mike."
I know. I got to text my new friend Steve, and get out there. I'm scheming. As a matter of fact, I'm trying to pull together. Like I think I'm going to do a big one where I'm going to do Galehead North and South Twin. So I got to ping Steve. So Steve, if you're listening, my new friend, my new knobby.
We should bring out our knobbies.
Yeah, I should probably actually ask Nobby too if he wants to come. So.
Well, Nobby's itching to get out there. He's feeling better. He's had some medical trauma lately, so he's a fighter though. We'll see him back soon.
I remember he was on. He had the head wound. Like poor guy. Oh, he's the best.
Yeah, he's awesome.
All right, so welcome to episode 89 of the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast. This week we are recapping the buddy hike that we did last weekend for newer hikers. We'll learn all about it. We're going to learn whether anybody actually showed up, whether it was a success. Did Shandi drive Mike crazy? Will we ever do this again? All the answers to these essential questions and everything you ever wanted to know about group hike organization we'll cover tonight. So later in the show, we're going to do a short segment to revisit some unsolved mysteries of New Hampshire and the White Mountains. So we're going to talk about Maura Murray, little update on a missing hiker, Stephon Porith Sou, and then we'll revisit Michael Miller, who was a gentleman that went missing in the early 80s, MIT student that was hiking on Mount Lafayette. So stay tuned for all the latest updates on these cases. I'm Mike.
And I'm Stomp. Let's get started.
All right, and talking beer here. So what do you got, Stomp?
Well, let's see. I want to give a plug out to CS Coffee. Briefly quick.
And, sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. Hey, we're all getting used to this new format here. It's all good. CS Instant Coffee. Zero waste instant coffee that comes in compostable packets. Perfect for the trail and home. Each packet makes about 20 ounces of coffee. So you can take one of them on an overnight trip and make it... Oh, and it makes 2 pretty good sized cups of coffee. Put it in your backpack, find some hot water, and you're good to go. Learn more by going to our show notes or Google CS Instant Coffee. www.csinstant.coffee. And yeah, I'm enjoying not a coffee, but a brew. I'm back to my old Burlington Beer Works here, and it's an Intangible Tides, and it's a double IPA, which is really tasty.
Not bad. And I am drinking something from Widowmaker Brewing Company out of Braintree, Mass. It's called Blue Comet, which you had done the story about the Comet last week. So I was like, I'll bring a Comet beer.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a New England IPA. It's 7.1% alcohol, and it's pretty tasty.
Yeah, good stuff. And we have one notable hike. If you want to tag SLASR on your hike, do so, and you'll be considered for the weekly notable hike. So this week, Nick hikes and plays guitar, did Mount Hayes for his 37th out of 52 on the 52 with a view list. So nice job, Nick. Thanks for tagging us too. Appreciate it.
Yeah. I remember getting up there in the last dirty dozen or so for the 52 with a view, and it's the driving gets serious once you start digging into that list.
Really? Yeah.
Yep.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Well, I'd say I remember when I hiked Mount Hayes, it was on one of the hottest days of the year, and I was covered in sweat.
Mm-hmm. Where is Hayes? Kangamangas?
That's the one where when you go, you cross, you leave the Wildcat Carter Marias, and you cross Rattle River, and then you're heading into Grafton Notch. It's the first peak off to the left of the Appalachian Trail as you start heading up to Mount Success in that area.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep.
Nice area.
Yes. But I had teed up the whole idea that I was covered in sweat so you could do the next advertisement.
Oh. Do you like back sweat?
I do not like back sweat.
Dude, sorry. I was just too into the story. Like, oh, all right. Well, we have our second sponsor back to back. And back sweat sucks in all types of weather and hikes. Not only is it uncomfortable, sweat is a risk factor, causing your core temperature to fluctuate if it doesn't evaporate off your back. Check out Vaucluse's Cool Dry Backpack Airflow Frame, a backpack accessory that installs on your favorite pack, sizes 18 liters up to 65 liters, and creates an airflow gap between you and your pack. Whether you're in hot or cold temps, even if you have a pack with a curved frame, the Cool Dry Frame is a real game changer when it comes to airflow. So visit VaucluseGear.com to order a Cool Dry Frame today. And, honestly, we're moving into this buddy hike. A few people had those. And I got to check them out in person. They look super cool. Highly rated, man. I'm telling you, people are loving these things.
Yeah, more and more I'm hearing from people that are using them, and they're saying, there's a lot of sweaty people that hike, and a lot of them are coming back and saying they're still sweaty, but like not so much sweaty in the back, which is nice.
Yeah, and it's a nice design. I was really curious. It's one thing to see it online or discuss it, but it's another to actually get your hands on it and check it out. So it's very discreet too. It's not like this humongous piece of gear that's hanging on your back. It's a very, it's tucked in there and it's pretty petite.
SLASR's hiking topic of the week.
All right, so SLASR topic of the week.
Yeah.
So we're gonna do a recap here. So me and Stomp did a hike with like about 30 other people last week, and we're gonna recap it. There was not 30 people in our group. We kept it low, like it was like less than 10 people in each group, I think. So it was like 25 people, 30 people total. But we did this buddy hike. So I had posted this buddy hike on the Hiking Buddies Facebook group probably about 2 months ago, and I think the total number of people that had signed up, so you can basically say maybe or yes. I think I got like 90 people that had signed up.
Right.
And as a follow-up to anybody that had said yes, they were going, I sent out a link to a Google sheet and asked people to fill out the Google sheet. So I ended up getting around 30 people that filled out the Google sheet. I pushed everybody else to like not going and just said, this is the 30 people that are going. And the nice thing is that within the groups, we had like anywhere from 3 to 4 experienced hikers that could lead and support the newer hikers. So it was almost like a 50-50 mix between experienced hikers and newer hikers. So we ended up scheduling the groups to start an hour apart. So we had a 7:30 group, 8:30 group, and 9:30 group. And me and Stomp were in the 7:30 group, right, Stomp?
Well, yeah. I mean, I showed up at 7:30, so I missed the memo on it was a departure time of 7:30. Oh, well. I got some heat from several of the hiking members, but hey, what can you do?
It was fine. I think we ended up getting on trail at like 7:45 or so, and but it was good. I was hanging out. I was talking to some of the hikers. Like I was able to walk through like some of the gear with one of the hikers. John was kind of going through and showing me what he had, and we were. I was having him pull some stuff out. I was like, I don't think you're going to need a couple of things. He had like an extra pair of pants, and I was like, I don't think you're going to need the snow pants as a backup in this weather. And there was a couple of other things like food that he had, which is pretty common. I think a lot of newer hikers will bring too much food with them.
Yeah. So,
but it worked out good. So we headed up the trail at about 7:30, and I think our group, because it had snowed out the night before, some people that had headed up turned around because they weren't comfortable driving. But ultimately, I think we ended up heading out with like, was it 7 or 8 people in our group?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good crew.
Yeah. So we had a dog too. So Shandi helped us. So basically, the experienced hikers in our group were me, Stomp, and Shandi, right? And Michael Methy too.
Yeah, there are a few.
So
exactly. Yeah, Mike knew his stuff.
Yeah, so we had 4 experienced winter hikers and then 4 new hikers.
Mm-hmm. So before we left for the trail, I think one of the biggest questions that I was fielding was how to put the snowshoes on your pack. Everybody had the spikes and everybody's ready to go. And honestly, it wasn't really a huge snowshoe day, but nonetheless, people were encouraged to bring them just to get used to carrying them and everything else. But that was a big challenge for some folks, including myself.
Yeah.
It's never easy.
Exactly. I think there's 4 real ways that you can mount your snowshoes on the backpacks, and it's really dependent on your backpack. I think that if you have side straps, I think the easiest way to mount them is to do one on each side of your backpack, and then you can cinch them in. That's how I used to do it in my Deuter backpack. I could just basically cinch them into the side straps. The down part of that is that you no longer have access to your water bottles if you want to use those water bottle carriers.
Exactly, right. It's a trade-off.
Yeah. The second most common method is that if you have some sort of a backpack with a pocket, I think the Ospreys have that. I know my Hyperlight has that pocket, so I'm able to just put my snowshoes in that back pocket.
Yeah.
The downside of that is that I carry a closed cell sleeping pad, and I can't put that in my back pocket, which is where I usually put it. I actually just put it inside my backpack, so it's not a big deal, but there's trade-offs. The third way that a lot of people will do it is if you have straps on top, you can basically put it on top, and then Stomp. I think the way you do it is you put it like kind of in the middle, but like you do it like across, so it's like perpendicular on your backpack, right?
Yeah. Well, I have 2 methods. I usually stuff them on the sides, the side pockets, and then cinch them at the top. Saturday I was rushing to get up with you guys, so I just put them in between the brain and the lower third zipper access pocket of my pack. So it was right in the middle, sort of resting right above my foam pad. And I just cinched them down really tight and just it looks sort of ridiculous. It looks sort of like the Christmas tree hanging off the back of my truck. It was like the pack was 6 feet long behind me.
Yeah. Exactly. But yeah, there's no right or wrong answer. That's, I guess, the point is that whatever works for you is fine. As far as you'll see a million different variations on how to put your snowshoes on.
Yeah.
On your pack.
Right.
So we headed out. Like I said, the ground rules were that we basically had a lead hiker who was in front, setting the pace. Then so I was in the lead. Stomp, you were the last hiker, so you were the sweep. Mm-hmm. And then Shandi was the sweep, right?
Well, I was more or less the sweep all day, but there was Shandi also as a backup. She was catering to some of the folks in the middle, and then Mike was the turnaround, the designated turnaround person in case somebody had to turn back.
Yeah, exactly. So we had this idea basically that if we had somebody that wasn't feeling it and wanted to turn back, we would continue to take the full group out, but we would if the person was feeling fine and they just didn't want to keep going, then Mike was ready to just sort of turn back and hike slowly back down with them, with the understanding that like there was going to be other groups coming up the trail, so there was no risk in doing that.
Sure.
Normally I would say you never want to abandon somebody, but if you do have it set up where there's an agreement where you've got experienced hiker that's going to go back and agree to stay with somebody, and as long as there's no medical issues, I think that's okay.
Oh yeah, that was fine. Absolutely.
Yep. Yeah. So we headed up. I didn't know. I guess the one thing I was a little bit nervous about Stomp is I didn't know what everybody's comfort level was with pace. Mm-hmm. We had 4 newer hikers, and they all. I think I stayed at about a mile per hour going uphill.
Yeah.
And the one thing I struggled with was like I didn't want to continuously just look back to see if like the group was breaking up.
Yep.
I felt like the first half of it, or at least until we got to Mizpah cutoff, like the group was pretty much comfortable at the pace that we went at and stuck together, right?
Yeah, and I was surprised because, I mean, we really didn't take too many breaks. If we did take a break, it was fairly brief. We took more breaks after the Mizpah junction, but the first half, we were just motoring. So I was pretty observant. I really wanted to make sure that, the newer members could handle the pace and they weren't overdoing it or just trying to keep up with the group, you know what I mean? So,
and I think the nice thing is that later on when we made it past Mizpah Hut, I think I kept the same general pace, and I do tend to. I normally I would hike a little bit faster than we went. Honestly, not that much faster, but the good thing is that we did start to see some breaks in the group. And I think this is something to keep in mind if you're with a group, is that Stomp was really good about sort of like yelling up and say, like as soon as the group started like having some significant separation, when I say significant, like maybe 10 to 15 feet between one set of hikers and then the other, Stomp was actually pretty good about saying like, hey, Mike, just a heads up, let's take a break. Yeah, and I remember you doing that like a couple of times towards the end because I wasn't able to really pay attention to that. And then I purposely sort of did longer breaks to just say like, okay, let's make sure that, we're giving because we all felt pretty good. We were all pretty warm, so we could afford to do the longer breaks. But I think that's a piece of advice I would say to people that are hiking in a group like this, is that whoever's in the back, have them be in charge of calling the break. In theory, you would think the lead person would be the one in charge of it, but I think the back person is the better one because they can see what's going on.
Yeah, and I really made that sort of my mission on that day because I really wanted to adhere to that group ethos. Don't let the group break up. But if somebody's going a little slower, make sure that person's with another person. And I think that's what's nice about, the being in the back. And, it happened to a degree as we were going up, but we found a pace towards the back for the slower folks and worked out great.
Yeah. And I stopped a couple of times. I was like, I'm going to eat because I wanted to encourage people to eat. And then the other cool thing is that we had, Shandi has this awesome dog, Sage, who has done all the 4,000 footers, and Sage was with us. And when we had breaks, like Sage liked to play catch the stick. Sage liked to play no give backs. So we would just be playing with the dog. So that entertained us pretty much while we were resting, because we would do like 5-10 minute rest, I would say, right?
Yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah, so it worked out good. So these are all things I hadn't even considered about when we were planning the hike, but it was a lesson learned, is that the back person should be the one calling the brakes so that they can see when people are starting to separate in the group.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then Stomp, do you want to tell the story about how we picked up? So we started with 8 hikers. We actually picked 2 hikers up at the Mizpah cutoff.
Maybe keep their names
newer hikers
private, if you don't mind.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah,
but it was really interesting because I'm going to sort of tie this into the future tie episode, and I'll try to be brief. But when we were at the Mizpah Junction cutoff, 2 younger hikers, I don't know, maybe in their late teens, early 20s, poor judge of age.
They were, I think I picked up, they were 16.
Okay. So they were fairly young.
16, 17.
They walked up upon the junction, and it was clear to me by body language and just their mannerisms that they weren't quite sure where they were going. And just looking at what they had on for gear, it was sort of setting a signal in my mind, like, I should keep an eye on these 2 folks. And I ended up, along with another member or 2, saying, hey, where you going? And Pierce, okay, it's that way. So it was the other direction. So they were making the first wrong turn, and we corrected that. They continued up trail, and within a minute or 2, you had stepped off for a moment. We caught up with them again, and they were having issues with balling on their spikes, and gave them a quick little lesson, like, whack the side of the tree, that type of thing. And at that point, I just inserted myself and said, hey, why don't you join us? So it was really cool. So, and they were relieved. They seemed relieved, like, oh yeah, that's great. So this ended up being their 3rd winter hike. They're avid, warmer weather hikers, but this is sort of new for them. And as many listeners know, winter hiking is a whole different ballgame. It's a deeper, steeper learning curve. So I was relieved that they joined us. And, along the way, we talked about all kinds of things in terms of preparedness, and I would intermittently just ask, do you have this and that? And, they actually were fairly well prepared, which is a good thing. I just didn't know what was in that little pack and this and that, but I'm always thinking about that stuff. So ended up being really cool. So where am I going with this? So I was picking their brains about where they get their information on, is it social media, is it peers, and this and that. And this ties back to a recent conversation that is starting in the search and rescue community. We are looking at how do we make sure that we have a constant flow of the younger generations coming in to become volunteer search and rescue members. So that's part of it. When we started talking about that, it occurred to me that we should be looking outside of the teams as well to say, are we getting the hike safe and the education out to these younger generations? And that's a big question for me, and that's something that we hope to talk to Ty about when he does make it on eventually. And long story short, there's a ton of information. It's like, just briefly, the Zoomers, they are on their phone 24/7. They do sort of like group dynamics, which is a great thing for, like, say, hiking buddies. But the surprising thing in my research has been that, Facebook is probably not going to be a source of education for them. It's going to be the short little 10, 15 second clips on YouTube or reels on Instagram. So, we're going to talk about that because I think all of us as hikers have to figure out how to educate the younger generation, because I don't want to paint them with a broad brush, but the recent events over the last several months have piqued my curiosity as to whether or not we're reaching people with the basic safety stuff, or if it's just falling on deaf ears, or if it's just not being heard at all. So it's going to be a good conversation when Ty comes in.
Yeah, it's interesting. I noticed, like, when I was driving into Cambridge this week, like, there was a big, we'll talk about billboards in a little while, but there was a big billboard with backcountry skiers basically skinning up Mount Washington Valley somewhere, and I was sort of thinking, I was like, well, that's a great advertisement, and it's a beautiful picture, but I feel like that money might be better well spent to sort of just, advertise hiking, but maybe the 10 essentials.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Versus, I get it, they want tourism and they want people getting up there, but I do think there's a balance there, and I don't think that they lead necessarily on their advertisements with safety, which maybe we need to start doing a little bit more.
Well, that's the thing. I think the younger generations, this is my hypothesis, are they seeing videos like that without any safety context whatsoever? And they say, oh, great, I'm going to go to REI, buy my skis or my boots, off I go. There's absolutely a gap there with what people are receiving, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too, Stomp, is like we hear this common issue comes up all the time where people will say like, oh, I saw someone on the trail that was unprepared. And honestly, I don't necessarily, I think that these two young people were, they would have been okay. They were doing fine. They made it up to the Mizpah cutoff by themselves, and they would have been okay ultimately. There's a ton of people out that day, but we get questions from people that are like, oh, should I say something if I see somebody that's unprepared? And I think I didn't really witness it too much, Stomp, because I think I was just a little bit too far away from it. But it sounds to me like, you and some of the folks in the back sort of struck up a rapport with them, non-threatening, non-judgmental, but offered them the opportunity to come along. They seemed to be happy to join us. Like they were, especially when they figured out like, oh, this is a group that's just newer winter hikers that are learning. I think that they sort of hopped in. They were like, oh, this is perfect for us.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I agree. I had a bit of a conversation with some of the Hiking Buddies admin staff and, the people that run the operation, and really interesting topic about first line of defense in this battle is just the person you see on trail. And it's a very interesting idea. And that probably is the best place to educate people, is right on the trail when you see them. If it's like, and then the question is like, when do you do that? Obviously, if there's some obvious problem, you have to speak up. I think in this situation, it was appropriate the way it was handled, and just as you said, they were prepared and probably would have been fine. But when you do see those people that are just so clearly in over their heads, which is funny because on the way down we saw several people in cotton and just sitting in the snow. Yeah. I mean, that's the moment where you would probably say, hey, what you doing? Where you going? What's your plan? Yeah. How you feeling? I mean, I think it's a really valid point. That's a great moment to teach people right there on trail. Yeah. So, but it was fun, and they did fine, and they were great. We were joking around at the end, and I gave them the SLASRPodcast stickers. And I know that one of them hopped on the buddies group on Facebook. So even though I do think the young people might hop on Facebook more than we realize, but like they hopped on and said thanks and happy to meet us. So I think now they know about the Hiking Buddies if they want to go out. I mean, I give them a ton of credit. Like I think we give a lot of the younger generation sort of this knock about like, oh, all they're doing is like on their phones and on video games. Like, I love that they were out. It was awesome. Yeah. Oh, wait till we have this conversation, because the differences in the generations are amazing. The learning styles and this and that. So,
but just moving on to some of the highlights. So we hiked Mount Pierce. We went up the Crawford Path. There wasn't a lot of views. It was socked in. But not too bad. There was no wind. Trail conditions were like basically maybe an inch of snow, so it was appropriate to wear snowshoes. It was microspikes the whole way up. Snow base is pretty light at this point. Mm-hmm. And we all carried snowshoes, but we didn't use them. It was pretty crowded when we got up to the summit. Like we didn't see a ton of people, but as we were coming down, like there was the other buddy groups coming up. There was an AMC group that was hosting a hike. They probably had it looked like 15, 16 people with them, and then there was just various other people that were coming up. There was a couple of solo hikers coming by us and everything. So it was pretty busy up there. So it was really a good day to learn. It's just the only bummer was no views.
Yeah. for sure. I mean, I really love those gray days. And you could see maybe half a mile onto the ridge towards Eisenhower, and that's sort of enough for me. I mean, when you're surrounded by those trees that are covered in snow, it's just so beautiful.
Oh, yeah. Looks like cotton candy, like white cotton candy everywhere.
Yes, it's so awesome. It was a good time. I'm glad you pulled it together, and I'm glad I actually got to make it.
Yeah. And I think a couple of things I wanted to just sort of throw out there for people when you're looking at whether it's a meetup group or a Facebook group, or you're just coordinating. I think a couple of things to look for when you're getting involved in these groups and you've never done it before is take a look at the people that are coordinating. Are they communicating? Are they being very clear about sort of the group dynamics and the expectations? Are they very clear about the pace? Are they very clear about agreeing that everybody's going to stick together? And then if you're inexperienced, like, if you bring it up to say, I'm a newer hiker, are they open to that? And are they, supportive? So I think if you're getting a weird vibe from somebody, or you feel like, it's not a good fit, I think go with your instincts when it comes to this stuff, when it comes to meetup groups and different things, because even, you even see it on the buddy group sometimes where people will come on and say like, oh yeah, I had a group that like just didn't stick together. As much as we try to advise them, it doesn't always stick. So you got to be careful.
Sure. Yeah. I would do it again. Are you planning some more in the future?
Yeah, I think I'm going to do something in March. So I'll take a look at my schedule and try to get another one. I definitely want to do one with a view this time. So I think if I post again, I'll be much more flexible to say like, hey, we're going to do it on Saturday, but if the weather doesn't look good, I may push to Sunday. So don't sign up unless you're flexible.
Do you think they'd be open to a modest bushwhack or anything like that?
I think you just got to be clear. I think you would want to tell people like, look, I want to experience people, and you need to have, face protection, and you need to be comfortable with the idea of doing a modest bushwhack.
Yeah. Maybe it's the wrong venue. I was thinking like a 101 bushwhack, like something really simple.
Yeah, I'm sure there'd be people that'd be excited about it.
Cool.
I did want to give a shout out to a bunch of people here. So I talked about like, all the new hikers that were there and, looking to learn. It was great to make some new friends. So shout out to everybody that was getting out there to sort of learn, but this wouldn't have been possible unless we had some really good, strong hikers to lead so that we could feel comfortable that everyone was going to be safe. So Shandi, thank you so much. Yeah. Mike, thank you so much. And Stomp, thank you for our group. The 8:30 group, we had Julie and Heather that were leading that group, and then Nancy, I think, was also helping out. Nancy, I think was their third there. And then the 9:30 group, we had Andrew and Rhonda that were helping to organize that group as well. So really good. And, Rhonda, Andrew, Julie, Heather, Nancy, Mike, they're all involved in the buddies group, Shandi. So if you see them posting any buddy hikes, I definitely highly recommend that you check it out and join them. They're all great people. We went to Reckless afterwards. I think almost everybody went to Reckless afterwards.
Yeah, it was a nice crowd. Good time.
It was a good time. So I would say, reflection from my perspective, it was a success.
Oh, I would say so, for sure. I think everybody learned something in some manner, whether it be gear, whether, awesome.
So I wanted to just do a quick update on a couple of our 3 unsolved mysteries in the White Mountains in New Hampshire. First one I wanted to update is Maura Murray. So we are coming up on the 18th anniversary of Maura Murray gone missing. Yeah. All right. Want to recommend that people check out. Maura has a sister, Julie. Julie has been running a TikTok account for the last year that has really kept the focus on the interest in finding Maura, and it's also removed a lot of the distractions. I think Julie finally came to the realization that if she leaves the speculation up to the Reddit groups and the podcasters and the book writers, that she's really going to be dealing with a lot of like false information and stuff that really doesn't help. So Julie's sort of taken it upon herself to just sort of directly communicate to people that are interested, and she's focusing on leads that actually matter versus like all this crazy speculation. There's a lot of psychics up there. There's a lot of like conspiracy theorists, people pointing at the family and other things that just isn't likely. So shout out to Julie. I'll link her TikTok account on our show notes, but I wanted to just sort of talk a little bit about two things. One is that there are currently 7 active billboards across Massachusetts, and I think into New Hampshire, that are asking for the public's help with information. So if you know anybody that knows anything about this case, or if you know anything about this case, please check out those billboards. There's a number to the New Hampshire police that are investigating this that you can reach out to, but they're looking to see if they can generate some leads here.
Okay.
The other thing that has come up that's kind of interesting is that there is a new potential lead that is an old lead, actually. So Julie Murray had been going through some of the old police statements and had identified something that had happened the night that Maura had gone missing. So she went missing, I think around 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock is when the police calls came in.
Yeah.
There's a police log entry about 5 hours after Maura disappeared, where they identified a suspicious person in an area close to the crash site that was driving a white Jeep Cherokee, a Grand Cherokee. Mm-hmm. This person was identified, the vehicle was identified by the Haverhill Police Department, and they had basically followed up a report of the suspicious vehicle. The chief of police at the time, Cecil Smith, he had attempted to try to speak to the driver at the time, but that driver had actually taken off. So they never actually got the information for the driver of the Grand Cherokee. Mm-hmm. Now, the interesting thing about this particular lead is that when they looked at Maura's vehicle, so Maura had crashed into a snowbank. She had engaged with a local resident who was a bus driver, gentleman by the name of Butch, and Butch had interacted with Maura. Maura had said that she was waiting for a tow truck or something, not to call the police. There is some suspicion that Maura might have been drinking because there was alcohol found in her vehicle. Mm-hmm. Butch went back. Butch Atwood is his name. He went back to his house, told his wife what was going on. They called 911. The police came. Maura was no longer there. So the vehicle was still there. One of the things that they found in the vehicle was a random car part. So they found this inside the vehicle. They took a look at the part, and it actually traces back to Chrysler as a manufacturer. So Chrysler is the company that actually manufactures Jeeps. Oh. So it could be that this part is from a Jeep Cherokee, Grand Cherokee. The other thing about this is that there was a scuff mark in the back of Maura's car on one of the bumpers that was white paint. So they're trying to figure out, like, okay, is there any more information they can gather about this white Grand Cherokee?
Wow, that's really interesting.
New Hampshire plate. So if anybody knows anyone that was around the Haverhill area that used to drive a white Grand Cherokee,
18 years out,
dig into it a little bit.
I mean, they have records, DMV records.
Yeah, they'll have to look into it a little bit more. I know there's a thread on Reddit about it. I haven't delved into that piece of it yet. I mostly just looked at Julie's TikTok account, but I thought that was interesting.
Oh, sure.
The other interesting thing that she brought up was that she had done a video about a week ago back, and she had indicated that somebody had asked some details about the dogs and what they used to identify Maura's scent. The family has indicated that one of the things that they used to give the dogs a scent was a pair of gloves that were in the vehicle. The concern is that the family doesn't actually know whether or not Maura ever actually wore those gloves. I guess they were a new gift, and there was some pictures of her in cold weather where she wasn't even wearing the gloves. So Julie theorizes that it could be that they gave the dogs these gloves to get the scent for Maura, and that Maura had never actually worn the gloves, so her scent may not have even been on them.
Jeez. Interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Keep the hope alive. I mean, I still think that it's very likely that she ran off into the woods. She ended up on somebody's private property, and it just hasn't been searched.
Wow. I have no idea. I mean, so many possibilities, so many different theories. It's intense, but it's heartbreaking. 18 years later, I can't imagine.
Yeah, interesting. So the next one that I wanted to cover here is a case that a young man by the name of Stephon Porith Sou. This is a young man out of Lowell, Massachusetts, I believe.
Okay.
He had gone missing in 2019 over winter. So this was I don't know if you remember this one, Stomp, but Fish and Game had done a search based on potentially this person being spotted on the auto road during winter.
I remember this one. Yeah.
Remember this one?
I do.
So there's been a little bit of a weird development. I'm a little uncomfortable even going down this path, but I figured it was worth just sort of talking about because it's interesting.
Yeah.
So the original story was that this young man had gone missing. He had come up to New Hampshire. He had bought some gear. They had like the receipts of the gear that he had bought to go hiking. He was like a newer hiker, and he'd gotten in an argument with his father on March 8th, 2019. And I guess he had been spotted in Chelmsford or something, and then eventually made his way up to New Hampshire. His car was eventually found in Pinkham Notch. For whatever reason, and I have not been able to pin this down, but for whatever reason, Fish and Game had initiated a search around the auto road area. And I remember at the time people were saying, he might have been spotted on the auto road. I also remember around that time an employee of the auto road coming onto the Facebook pages to remind people that you cannot hike up the auto road in winter conditions. So I don't know if those are related or not, but Fish and Game had initiated a search, but they just didn't have a lot of information to go on. And this person has never been located.
Right.
His vehicle was located. The weird thing is that there was a cell phone ping in Chelmsford, Mass, after he had supposedly gone missing, I think on or around March 10th as well. So I think ultimately they found his car on March 18th or the 17th. So it was a week later. So there was a big period of time where he had been missing and presumed to be hiking and had gone missing. Now, the development that I find interesting is, and I don't want to give out a lot of detail here, but there was a summary on Reddit in the Unsolved Mysteries thread talking about Stephon. Somebody had come on and had posted a flyer that's been going around Lowell, and that flyer is indicating that this was potentially foul play involved in this, and that that there's people that know more about this case than they're letting on in the local area where he lives. Okay.
In Lowell.
Which, if this was in fact true, then it would seem to me that that would indicate that potentially somebody might have dropped the car up in Pinkham.
Yeah, like
and
a
then
straw
maybe
man.
he was never even on the mountain. So who knows?
Yeah, little diversion.
Yeah,
That's
which I found very interesting. So I don't know. The thing I'm curious about is what report Fish and Game got that motivated them to start a search. I haven't been able to find anything in news articles to cover why they did that.
Yeah, was there a 911 call or a family member, maybe?
I don't know. I feel like somebody had said that he had been spotted on the auto road potentially, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'd have to look at the old report if it's out there.
Yeah. So it's interesting,
weird.
but it's an interesting little twist.
Oh yeah,
and there's some flyers going around in Lowell. There's a picture of one on the Reddit site. I'm not going to link to it because I just don't. I hesitate to. I don't want to be one of those sort of podcasters that's blaming people and coming up with these crazy conspiracy theories. But I just find it interesting that there was such a wide amount of time that had gone from the time that he had gone missing to the time that they had found the vehicle. Yeah. And it's just an interesting theory that maybe there was foul play that happened closer to where he lived, and that they used the sort of bringing the car up to Pinkham Notch maybe as the diversion. I don't know.
Right. Could be. You have a future in detective work here, Mike.
Not me. But I think it's important. And again, I don't know where the family stands on this. I know that there's a Facebook group that has been lightly active around keeping his memory alive, but it just seems very sad that a young person like that has been gone missing and no sign of him. And it's very rare that somebody's body isn't found when they go missing in the Whites.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, a handful. Which is a segue to the third unsolved mystery is, again, Michael Miller. We talked about him. This is a young man he was an MIT student that went missing in the early 80s. He had been hiking with two friends up Old Bridle, took off from his friends and headed up, I think he went off trail, headed up a drainage. I'm assuming it would have been either Walker Brook or there's basically 1, 2, 3 drainages on the way up to there's Lafayette Brook, Walker Brook, and then there's a brook in between those two, which it's not named on my map, so I don't know what it's called. It's also called Walker Brook, interestingly enough. Yeah, Lafayette Brook, Walker Brook, and then Dry Brook. So one of those drainages is probably where he went, but he just hasn't been found, which I think is pretty fascinating. I mean, we're talking 40 years now.
Well, who's looking, though? I mean...
Nobody's looking.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, it's just such a massive area. Yeah, that's a shame.
Apparently he was wearing a leather jacket. Do you think would a leather jacket survive the elements?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I wonder, if anybody was out hiking and they found a leather jacket years ago and just didn't think anything of it, and just the evidence is gone now.
Well, certainly the buttons would be there. It would be weathered as hell, but it'd be something.
Yeah, interesting. So,
do you know the weather during that period of time, or is that way, way back there? I mean, 40 years back.
No, what happened in this case is that it was in November, I believe, and it was a reasonable day from a weather perspective. But what happened is he went missing, and that night a snowstorm came rolling in, and it was crazy, whiteout conditions and really tougher than the search. So they were searching for 4 or 5 days in really tough conditions, because it was basically the first set of snowstorms that came in, and it was just really tough conditions for them.
Wow. Jeez.
Yeah. So a lot of unsolved mysteries in New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm.
Stomp. So I think we're going to move on to our last segment, which is search and rescue news. But before we do that, I think you got one more commercial you got to do.
Sweet Beginnings Daycare. Sweet Beginnings Daycare is a New Hampshire state licensed childcare. Oh, by the way, do you babysit cats by any chance? Daphne's driving me crazy.
I see Daphne.
Oh my goodness,
crazy
she's nuts. Okay,
yeah.
So they are a licensed New Hampshire state childcare provider that offers care for children and maybe cats, if I can convince them to do that, from 6 weeks to 12 years, with flexibility in before and after school care as well. Sweet Beginnings aims to instill a love for learning by providing a safe and positive experience within a loving and warm environment. Sweet Beginnings Daycare believes this is a good foundation to teach children in order to prepare them for their future. For more information, contact Sweet Beginnings at 603-568-4530. Visit them at Sweet Beginnings Daycare on Facebook, or email Shandi at shandielliott@outlook.com, and that's ShandiELLIOTT.
Get those kids babysat.
I got to talk to Shandi a bit about her business. She's doing well, but you can imagine that's an interesting day being surrounded by so many young ones, right?
Yeah. I mean, I remember, so my kids are like 2 years apart. So I had three, a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a newborn. So, but that was a long time ago. Yeah. I mean, you know even better than I do.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So hang in there, Shandi. Doing a good job.
Yes. Yep. All right. So moving on to search and rescue news. We don't have anything local, thank God. So this first one is a dog story here, Stomp, and it's in California. So I think California and Hawaii are going to keep us busy today. So a California dog owner has an Apple AirTag to thank for being reunited with her Australian Shepherd after the pup was swept away by floodwaters. Yeah. So Emily Brill was walking 1-year-old Seamus in San Bernardino County on Monday. I think they're getting a lot of rain out there.
Oh, hell yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah. So dog got away from her and ended up in a flood control basin churning with swift-moving floodwaters, which swept the pooch away before the owner could grab him. So the water was going fast. The dog just put one paw in the water and was off to the races. So the fire department was dispatched and began scouring the area in search of Seamus. I guess the owner put I guess there's a detailed Facebook post on here, but I guess while looking through the area, they had flagged down. The police had been flagged down by people that had reported seeing a dog floating down a channel and hearing it bark. So there's a bunch of photos here. So this is basically one of those, like, do you ever see Grease Stomp where they do the race of the cars in that dry drainage? Yeah, it's basically that, but when it floods.
Yeah. Crazy. But hey, good story.
Yeah.
Little guy was
so rescued. The witness, they followed Seamus and noticed that the canine had found a way out of the water and into some access tube. I guess the dog was equipped with an Apple AirTag and a conventional ID tag, so that was able to, I guess rescuers were able to pinpoint the location of the dog. So the dog was drenched and dirty, but otherwise okay.
The pictures are amazing. It's a great story. Something positive for use for the Apple AirTag other than spying on your spouse or something like that.
Exactly, yeah. And all the firefighters getting their picture taken with the dog.
Right.
So
oh man,
good. All right, this next one here is, well, wait a minute, is this the you've got a hiker died after a 700-foot slide, but didn't we do this last week? This isn't I think this is the same story we did last week, right?
Well, I can't be 100% sure because I deleted a story that captures 2 or 3 of these events, so this may be a new one.
Yeah, no, this is the same one we did. Okay. So there was I guess there's like 3 shoots here that are on this Mount Baldy. Matter of fact, there's a couple of things going on. We didn't pull this article, but there's an actor that's missing on Mount Baldy right now that we'll cover next week. But this is basically a recap of the story of the hiker that slid down about 700 feet that we covered last week. So she unfortunately passed away. She was a pretty well-known hiking influencer out there, and unfortunately, I think she's a 56-year-old female hiker that passed away after sliding down about 700 feet. That
wasn't the influencer, was it?
Yeah.
It was. Yeah. Okay, because there have been others. Because I deleted a story earlier that was talking about just the region trying to educate hikers about the dangers up there because too many people are slipping and sliding away.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in Mount Baldy at this point, so I think it's a good place to avoid unless you really know your stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
Right now. And then, Stomp, are you doing this to me on purpose?
No, but I found it fascinating because I do my weekly, scouring for stories, and Hawaii showed up at least a dozen times. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, I'm going to get my daughter. So my daughter's there right now. She's on a school project for 8 weeks. I'm going to have her come on and do some recaps of her hiking when she gets back.
I hope so. That'd be fascinating.
Yeah. She's been out already. She's done I think 2 or 3 hikes. So I think she's been she's pretty good. I mean, she's got the Gaia app, she's got the paper map, she knows what she's doing. So knock on wood, she won't get in trouble. But Stomp's got 3 search and rescue. So this first one is Stairway to Heaven. Is this like, it's like this really well-known hike, and I think part of it may be closed off. I think the stairway part of it is closed off, but it's called Stairway to Heaven. It's the haiku stairs that they actually call them Stairway to Heaven. But Honolulu Fire Department reported that a 911 call came in around 12:30. 32-year-old male had become lost and disoriented while on a hike that started at 8:30. The fire department responded to the call, and I feel like in Hawaii, like they don't even mess around. Like everything is helicopter based with their rescues.
It seems that way. I mean,
and I just think they have a lot of helicopters on the island. But
sure.
So the call came in at 12:49. Actually, first rescue unit arrived at 1:07, and a landing zone was established nearby, and rescue personnel were transported to the hiker. He was secured and transported back to the landing zone by 1:38. So this is within 45 minutes of the call coming in. They had a helicopter, and they had him in the helicopter.
Yeah. I was just laughing at the typo. Recuse personnel.
Yes.
Those are the people that recuse themselves from the rescue.
Yeah, exactly.
And
then we've got another story here. I think this is a different island. Hikers died at a viewing platform at Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. 70-year-old from Arizona passed away Sunday around 11 p.m. at Keanakokai Viewing Outlook. I guess this was a medical incident, so other park visitors called 911, tried to administer CPR, but the man was pronounced dead at the scene and taken north to the Hilo Medical Center. Sounds like he was believed to have died from natural causes.
Yeah.
The Keanokai Outlook gives visitors a view into the volcano's crater, which was covered by lava flow in 1977. The National Park Service suggests that the eruption may have been covered a quarry that was a source of hard rock used to make many tools such as axes. So it erupted in 1974, covering the crater with about 20 feet of lava. So it had brought the floor up to its current level. But
interesting, right?
It's only a mile hike, so it sounds like he just, not a bad place to pass away, I guess, right?
Yeah, I suppose so.
Yeah. And then this last one is from Hawaii, and then we're going to wrap up the show here. So firefighters airlift an injured hiker from the Nuu'anahu Trail. So this is in Honolulu.
I love listening to you tackle these Hawaiian terms.
I'm completely BSing the pronunciations, but I'm being confident about it just so no one will question me.
Yeah, it's super cool. It's great.
Yes, yeah, Nuu'anahu. 45-year-old hiker who sustained a shoulder injury after he went off trail. 5 units and 16 firefighters responded to a call off of the Lululamu Falls Trail shortly after 7:50 a.m. And fire rescue crews located this guy at 8:25 a.m.
Huh.
And the fire department's... The fire department. The fire department's. Oh, dude.
You choking on some lava?
You're going to have to edit this. Yeah, I'm just choking on my own language here.
That's okay. We're both dying.
The fire department's Air One helicopter took the hiker to a landing zone near the Board of Water Supply Reservoir, where care was transferred, where the hiker was transferred to the emergency medical services. So again, the Hawaii, it seems like they immediately just grab a helicopter and pick people out of the woods.
Yeah. I wonder how many people they get per year. Like New Hampshire gets, 2.5 million? Hawaii must be much, much more.
So, and I'll have Caroline on to give a recap, but so she's staying in Waikiki.
Yeah.
And she's in like one of these high rises, and essentially when she looks out the back of her high rise, like the front is the beach, the back is just like the mountains. So it's just basically it seems like the whole island is just surrounded by mountains. So there has to be like miles and miles of trails that people can go hike, and you can see the ocean from all these different angles.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing.
So, I mean, that's just one island. That's Oahu. That doesn't count like the islands where the volcanoes are on either.
Yeah. Well, how long is she out there for?
8 weeks. 8 weeks. So she's doing like a work project for school, she's living her best life.
Yeah. Air quotes, parentheses.
Air quotes.
Work.
So, yeah. Exactly. Work. She's doing like some project for a botanical garden, like to do with like marketing and getting people to like sort of be more dispersed around the area of the botanical garden. So it sounds like a pretty cool project.
Wow, that's neat.
Yeah.
Time of your life, kid.
But anyway, Stomp, that's all we got. So episode 89 is a wrap.
It's a wrap.
We did the buddy hikes. We talked about search and rescue. We talked about missing people. we did a lot.
Well-rounded. And we talked about pop culture.
Yes. We'll see you next week.
Later.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to learn more about the topics covered in today's show, please check out the show notes and safety information at SLASRPodcast.com. That's SLASR podcast.com. You can also follow the show on Facebook and Instagram. We hope you'll join us next week for another great show. Until then, on behalf of Mike and Stomp, get out there and crush some mega peaks.
Now covered in scratches, blisters, and bug bites, Chris Staff wanted to complete his most challenging day hike ever.
Fish and Game officers say the hiker from Florida activated an emergency beacon yesterday morning. He was hiking along the Appalachian Trail when the weather started to get worse. Officials say the snow was piled up to 3 feet in some spots, and there was a wind chill of -1 degree.
And there's 3 words to describe this race. Do we all know what they are?
Lieutenant James Nealon, New Hampshire Fish and Game. Lieutenant, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
What are some of the most common mistakes you see people make when they're heading out on the trails to hike here in New Hampshire?
It seems to me the most common is being unprepared. And I think if they just simply visited hikesafe.com and got a list of the 10 essential items and had those in their packs, they probably would have no need to ever call us at all.